Carolina Panthers, I think, are done with all of their voluntary, involuntary, mandatory, not mandatory practices that really don't do anything because we don't have a game until September. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be going to Panthers.com, especially when you can get super inside info, dirt on the way the Panthers got from 33 to 32 in the draft. Panthers.com guru, maestro, the man himself, Darin Gantt, joins us on the Adam Gold Show. I got to tell you, sir, that was super fascinating to read about how the Panthers got from 33 to 32. Well done.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And this is a big week at Panthers.com. In addition to our behind-the-scenes draft story, which you alluded to, episode 2 of Blueprint, which gives you a nice 43-minute video complement to that that covers free agency and the draft. A lot of cool behind-the-scenes video with that. And, just a little tease for you. Possibly some announcements coming in the next couple of days that Panthers fans might be interested in. So
I love those
on Panthers.com.
I love those for people who did not get a chance to go, and I know we have a bunch of things coming up that we want people to go. Certainly ask the old guy questions as well. What surprised you about that inside dirt that you were able to glean from conversations with Dan Morgan and others about how they got from 33 to 32?
Well, I think the biggest thing to me was it's not as if they were locked in. Even, they really like Xavier Ligon.
Sure.
And it's taken me a really long time to get used to saying it that way. And it's just counterintuitive, and I don't know how long it'll take, but it's going to take more than a couple months. It was the receiver position in general, because when you saw the way that thing started breaking, I got the sense that the thing, they had talked to basically everybody from about, early to mid-20s through the end of the first round about, hey, we think we might want to get into this ballpark. And I think the one that may have surprised them a little was the Bills trading with the Chiefs the first time through. Mm-hmm. I mean, somebody beat you in the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 years. You don't think that's who you want to be trading with. But they clearly wanted to get, some extra assets, Brandon Beane, and those guys wanted to stockpile some stuff. So I think if there was a surprise, it might have been that they dealt with Kansas City for 28 rather than doing, something with Dan and the Panthers at that spot. But they came back in at 31 and did what they needed to do. So I just think, or 32 rather. So I just think they wanted to get a receiver. And when you saw that clump of dudes from Worthy to Ricky Pearsall go, that's when it's like, no, we just got to do this, because when you look at who came back and took receivers in the top of the second round, those guys were all calling the Bills too.
Right.
The Bills were open for business, so they were trading 32 to somebody. So that was the point at which Dan and Brant Hillis just kind of said, let's go do the thing.
Darin Gantt is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Here's what struck me, because, and you and I have had these conversations before. It's really, really hard, and Dan Morgan admitted this, to trade up in drafts and stay on track to rebuild a franchise. I get trading up in a draft to giving away either assets for later in the draft or futures. I get it, and it makes sense if you are getting a piece that puts you into a serious position to contend for a title. But where the Panthers are, who need so much, I found it surprising, to be honest, that they were discussing trading up with teams that were drafting in the 20s, like around 20. I thought, man, that seems counterintuitive to me, because we need so many more bodies. But something that Dan Morgan said in that piece is that he didn't want to get into a position where he was trading more picks, and he wanted to come out with at least the same number of picks. Can you speak to that?
Right, and there was a real intentionality about that, because and not to call anybody out for anything that's been done in the past, but obviously they wanted to do things differently. And there was an intentionality about, okay, if it cost us a 1 and a 5 to move up a spot. Let's make sure we get a 6 back on the other side. So the inventory numbers stay the same. I mean, it seems like a small thing, but then when you turn around and, you trade back in the second round and get the extra 2 next year to make you whole, since you were lacking a 2 going into next year's draft anyway from the Bryce trade last year, when you get the extra one there, then you're able to move up a couple spots and go get Jonathan Brooks. So, I mean, I just think throughout all those, they were really careful every time, and listening into those conversations is fascinating because I'm telling you, numbers just are flying at you fast. It's like, all right, 45 for 52, 155, 196, or whatever it happens to be. And it's like, yep, check, let's do that. And that's how quickly that some of those things come together. And so it's fascinating to watch, but they were absolutely careful because they wanted as many coming back as were going out. And that's a reaction in the last couple of years. I don't think, again, none of those deals individually, you can talk about deals not made like the Brian Burns, Rams deal from a couple of years ago that they didn't take. But when you look at some of the things, I think the kind of stuff that you're going to see them not be in the business of is like, okay, a couple of picks for Laviska Shenault. All right, and again, nothing against Laviska. I think he's still got the possibility, if he can stay healthy, to be an impact offensive player for somebody. And, I just don't think they want to be giving up picks at this point because they know they want to be busy in free agency a little bit the next year, this year or next year. So you need some of that price-controlled labor of, late-round picks to balance the books.
No, you absolutely have to, and you have to hit on more of them than they have hit on. I think that's, to me, if I look back on the last, 4 or 5 years of the Panthers, it's the fact that they really haven't connected and found starters or significant contributors, after the first, really the first round of the draft.
And the one guy, and that's why I think stories like that when I wrote the other day or that published the other day, Blueprint kind of shows Trevin Wallace, the third-round linebacker out of Kentucky, is the one that the draft. It became cool for the draft industrial complex to kind of poo-poo that one and say, well, that's not value. That guy would have gotten drafted in the 5th round. Well, nobody knows that.
Right.
And the people who say those things generally don't know what they're talking about in terms of how other teams value certain guys. Because if, Dan Morgan knew who he was visiting with at every stop along the way. But when it comes to an off-ball linebacker to play in that defense, this guy has now been endorsed by Dan Morgan, who was pretty good at it. And if you watch Blueprint, which debuted last night on the Panthers YouTube channel and Panthers.com, you would know that he got a call from Lofa Tatupu, another pretty good inside linebacker who knocked out Nick Goings in the 2005 NFC Championship game to keep the Panthers from going to 2 Super Bowls in 3 seasons. So 2 pretty good endorsements of Trevin Wallace there that, Dan felt strongly about the guy, feels like he's going to be somebody who's a player for him down the line in years to come. And they don't need that guy to produce this year because you got Josie Jewell and Shaq Thompson. So I just think that's kind of a way that, stories like that, videos like that can kind of contextualize some of these moves and explain them to fans in a way other people cannot.
Personally, I think the reason why maybe the pick of Wallace came under discussion, if you will, was the fact that his name isn't the guy from isn't Peyton Wilson from NC State, who was still on the board at that time, right?
Yeah. And the other difference between those two guys is Trevin Wallace doesn't look like the guy from the Operation game with the light up red nose.
Come on.
Peyton Wilson is an amazing player, and he's one of those guys. When he gets drafted by Pittsburgh, that's one of those spots where you say, that's going to work for 4 years. Now, do you think that Peyton Wilson's going to be a 10-year player for the Pittsburgh Steelers? I mean, it's irresponsible to expect that based on his medical file. But, I think for right now, and there are certain guys in those spots, when the Steelers take somebody in the 3rd round or the Ravens take somebody in the 3rd round, it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Here's my counter to that. I think it's almost irresponsible. Irresponsible, it's not exact, but to think that any player in the NFL is going to be a 10-year player.
No question.
Right?
No
so
question. I mean, it's not
I just
a
figured Peyton.
proposition, but when you start with that kind of litany of injuries like Peyton had, I mean, and again, I hate it because I love watching the guy play. I mean, the people who compared him to Luke Kuechly, Dan Morgan, those kind of guys were not wrong. I mean, the guy was an animal on Saturdays.
I think he's going to be a great pro for 4 years, and then he'll probably be done. like so many other players. Look, my problem is really more with the collective bargaining agreement. That's another thing you pointed out, why there is greater value today going up one spot from the second round to the first round, is because Xavier Legette now is married to the Panthers, assuming he is a good player. We'll just assume that he's a good player. He's married to them for 5 years, and then there is, of course, the franchise tag if he's that kind of a player down the road. All right, one more thing.
Cost certainty has a value, no question.
Oh, tremendous. So let me get to one more thing before I let Darin Gantt go. And real quick, how'd the bridge game go today?
Bridge went outstanding. The wife and I executed our first small slam ever as partners. That was a big day for us. And let me tell you, I got to tell you, not only did I play bridge today, I rode my bike to go play bridge, which is probably the lightest thing one could possibly do on Juneteenth.
Are you retired? That I didn't know about? Did we just call the villages? Right? Did we just do that?
My bicycle only has 2 wheels, not 3.
Right,
okay,
fine.
So I'm at least still in the active adult community.
All
okay,
right, good.
Is there a basket?
Right, dinner is soon. Dinner, I think,
my wife has a basket. I have saddlebags hanging off the rack of mine, so I can carry supplies home from the grocery store.
That's amazing. I think dinner is at 4:30. All right. Sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought. All right, one more piece of business you would like to see the Panthers shore up before we start training camp.
I don't know that there's necessarily. I mean, I know there's a lot of chatter about Stephon Gilmore. To me, that one still doesn't make all the sense in the world. He was a better fit for where they thought they were 3 years ago than he is this year. I just think he's a guy who still deserves to get paid at the top of the game, and I don't think they're in a position where that top of the game 34-year-old corner is the right fit. I mean, I think, obviously everybody's walking around with scars. So is J.C. Horn. Based on his injury history, and that's always going to be a thing until it's not. But if JC's able to play, then I think J.C. Horn, Dane Jackson, with a good, smart vet nickel in Troy Hill, is able to, that's all right. That's not a position that's screaming for. Now, again, if JC gets hurt early, as he's done a couple times in the past, obviously you're going to look back and say you'd wish you'd have done something like that. But I just think right now, because of the commitment they've made to J.C. Horn, they've already picked up his fifth-year option. They know, I mean, if that guy's on the field, he's really good at football. And I just think that that's probably not as much of a priority. To me, the position that is a, big flashing red light is pass rusher because, Jadeveon Clowney's out there. He's 31 years old, and he's really good at it. He's as close to a like for Brian Burns in terms of impact, even though they're different kinds of players. But so many uncertainties after that. Caleb Chasen didn't show up for voluntary work, so we've only seen him in uniform 2 days. DJ Wanham still hasn't gotten on the field because he had some complications coming off of surgery for an injury last year. DJ Johnson was in and out of off-season work, and it's just question mark after question mark at that position. And to be the kind of defense they want to be, to play that style, that guy's got to be a guy. They can get away with one of them being an edge setter and a run stopper, and DJ Johnson can do that. But they need somebody else on the other side. So if anything happens to Jadeveon, that's bad.
Yeah. You're great. I appreciate your time, Darin Gantt.
We didn't even get to Euro 24. Who do you like?
I have Portugal. I actually have a ticket on Portugal to win.
Gambling on Euro 24 is next level. I'm not there because gambling's illegal at Bushwood, and I never slide. But I probably would have put a nickel down on Harry Kane and the boys bringing football home.
Finally,
I'm going to believe it until it happens.
We're bringing it home. It's never been there. Other than that,
Other than that.
All right, man. I appreciate your time, Darin. We'll talk to you soon.
Good time. See y'all soon.
You got it. Darin Gantt here on the Adam Gold Show.